The sky was the color of gunmetal, dull, heavy, and merciless. Snow drifted like ashes over the ruins of once lively towns, and the wind carried the sound of distant artillery, echoing through the broken ribs of Europe. It was January 1944, the heart of a winter that felt as though it wanted to finish what the war had started. Private Aaron Whitfield, just 22 years old and far too young for what he'd seen, walked through the frozen forest with his platoon. Their boots cracked the thin ice beneath them. He kept one hand on his M1 Garand, the other clutched to his chest where the cold bit through layers of wool and fabric like teeth. He hadn't always been a soldier. Just 2 years earlier, he was working in a small machine shop in Ohio, fixing engines and saving every penny for a motorcycle he dreamed of riding across the country. That dream felt like a memory from someone else's life now. War had a way of swallowing everything: dreams, families, futures. Their unit, part of the American 1st Infantry Division, was ordered to push deeper into a region of eastern France recently abandoned by German forces. But abandoned was never a word Aaron trusted. Germans didn't abandon territory. They repositioned, regrouped, and waited. Suddenly the platoon leader, Lieutenant Harris, raised a hand. Everyone froze. Scouts reported a farmhouse up ahead, the lieutenant whispered, his breath white in the cold air. Could be civilians, could be something else. Eyes open. As they approached, the snow lightened, and through the bare trees, they saw it, a lone farmhouse, half collapsed on one side with smoke rising weakly from its chimney. It looked peaceful, almost too peaceful. Whitfield, Harris said quietly. You take Thompson and check inside. Yes, sir. Aaron nodded at his friend Tommy Thompson, a freckled kid from Kansas who always had a joke ready even when bullets were flying, but today, Tommy didn't joke. He simply nodded back. They approached the house carefully, weapons raised. The door was half open, creaking in the wind. Aaron's heart beat hard against his ribs. He pushed the door slowly and stepped inside. The smell hit them first: smoke, dirt, and something metallic underneath. Then they saw her. A young woman, no older than 25, sat crouched near the fireplace, holding a small child wrapped in blankets. Her eyes were wide, terrified, as if she expected them to shoot on sight. Aaron lowered his weapon. It's okay, he said gently. We're not here to hurt you. The woman didn't answer. She only spoke German. Tommy whispered, Great, just great. Aaron tried again, slower. Are you hurt? She shook her head. The child in her arms stirred, a little girl, maybe 3 years old, with hair as pale as the snow outside. Lieutenant Harris entered behind them, his eyes sweeping the room with suspicion. Ask her if there's anyone else here. Aaron didn't know much German, but he knew enough. Bist du allein? Are you alone? The woman hesitated for too long. Then, a floorboard creaked above them. Harris's weapon snapped upward. Upstairs, now. Before anyone could move, a figure appeared at the top of the stairs, a wounded German soldier, his face pale, holding nothing but a piece of cloth in his trembling hand. Bit nicked, he whispered. Please, don't. Aaron froze. The German was barely older than him. Tommy muttered, He's unarmed. The lieutenant's jaw tightened. He's still the enemy. The German soldier stumbled, nearly falling down a step. The woman cried out and ran toward him, but Aaron held up a hand, signaling her to stop. Let me check him, Aaron said. Harris hesitated, then gave a curt nod. Aaron climbed the stairs slowly, one step at a time. The German soldier didn't move. His uniform was soaked with blood from a wound in his side. He wasn't going anywhere. When Aaron reached him, he saw the raw, desperate fear in the young man's eyes. It reminded him of his own first battle, of how terrified he'd been. Name? Aaron asked softly. Johann. Okay, Johann. I'm going to help you. He reached into his kit to pull out bandages, but Harris barked from below. Whitfield, get down here. We don't patch up enemy soldiers. Sir, if we leave him like this, he'll die. That's war. Aaron hesitated for only a second, but that second was enough. The little girl, seeing Johann collapse backward, cried out. Her mother grabbed her and held her close. That sound pierced something deep inside Aaron. He defied the order. Tommy, get me the medical pack. Tommy blinked, caught between loyalty to his friend and obedience to command. Then he made his choice. He tossed the pack up the stairs. Aaron knelt and began bandaging Johann's wound. When Harris stormed up the stairs, Aaron expected to be dragged away or court-martialed on the spot. Instead, Harris stared at Johann, then at the woman and child, and finally at Aaron. He let out a long, heavy breath. 5 minutes, he said. Then we leave. Aaron nodded gratefully. They left the farmhouse with the woman waving a silent thank you from the doorway. Johann sat by the window, pale but alive. As they marched back into the frozen woods, Tommy smirked. Look at you, war hero, Aaron replied quietly, just doing what's right. But he knew in war that doing what's right didn't always end well. If you connected with this story, please like and subscribe for more tales of humanity in the face of conflict. Thanks for watching.
2 nights later, their unit set up camp in a frostbitten valley. The air was frigid, and soon, snow began to fall again. These weren't gentle flakes. They were thick and heavy, swallowing every sound and blanketing the world in an eerie silence. Aaron found himself on the late watch, his eyes fixed on the dark, imposing forest that bordered their position. His thoughts drifted to Johann, the young German soldier, and his family. He wondered if they were safe, if they had found shelter from the biting cold. Around midnight, a sound broke the stillness. Footsteps. But these weren't the stealthy, calculated steps of an enemy patrol. They were desperate, stumbling, and chaotic. Aaron instinctively raised his rifle, his heart pounding in his chest, as a shadowy figure burst from between the trees. "Whitfield!" A voice cried out, hoarse and ragged. It was Lieutenant Harris. He was a mess caked in mud, his uniform torn and stained with blood. He was panting heavily, struggling to get the words out. "Patrol, ambushed. Germans everywhere. They're coming." Before Aaron could even process the warning, the night exploded. The sharp crack of gunfire ripped through the valley, shattering the quiet. Shadows moved in the darkness, flitting between the trees, German troops, flanking them from the north. "Positions!" Sergeant O'Leary's roar cut through the initial shock. "Incoming!" The sky lit up with the blinding flashes of explosions, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Aaron scrambled for cover, his training kicking in, and started firing blindly toward the muzzle flashes winking in the distance. Tommy was right beside him, his mouth moving, yelling something, but the sheer volume of the battle drowned out his words. Everything dissolved into pure chaos. This wasn't a skirmish. It was a carefully laid trap. The Germans hadn't been retreating at all. They had lured them in, and now the Americans were caught, surrounded, and outnumbered. The world shook violently with each impact. Men Aaron had shared breakfast with just hours before were suddenly gone, lost in the maelstrom of fire and ice. "Fall back." Lieutenant Harris roared, his voice strained. But there was nowhere to fall back to. They were pinned down, a deer in the headlights of an overwhelming force. And then, through the thick, acrid smoke and the swirling snow, Aaron saw something impossible. A figure, limping but moving with purpose, was heading toward their lines, waving both hands high in the air. A familiar figure, a young German soldier. It was Johann. Aaron blinked, convinced the smoke and the chaos were playing tricks on his mind, that he was hallucinating. But it was real. Johann was there. And struggling to keep up behind him were the woman and the child he had been protecting. "Amerikaner! Amerikaner!" Johann shouted, his voice filled with desperation. "Ambush! A bigger force is coming. You must run, now." Lieutenant Harris grabbed Aaron's arm, his face a mask of confusion and suspicion. "Why is a Kraut helping us?" he demanded. Aaron didn't have time for a long explanation. He just answered, "Because we saved him." Bullets shredded the trees around them, kicking up splinters and snow. To his credit, Harris didn't question it further. The urgency in Johann's voice was undeniable. "Move! Move out!" He commanded the remaining men. They followed Johann and the woman whose name they would later learn was Lena, down a hidden path winding through the forest, a trail only a local would know. It was a brutal journey. They pushed through dense thickets, their faces scratched by branches, stumbling through deep snow and over icy rocks. Finally, they reached a narrow ravine, a natural trench that offered some protection, and the sounds of the German pursuit began to thin. By the time the first gray light of dawn broke through the heavy clouds, they had reached a makeshift shelter, a small cave carved out of stone and earth. The firing had finally stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. One by one, the exhausted soldiers collapsed, their bodies screaming with fatigue and cold. Harris, breathing heavily, stared at Johann. His expression was a strange mixture of disbelief, relief, and profound gratitude. "You saved our lives," he said, the words hanging in the cold air. Johann just gave a small, weary nod. "War makes monsters," he said, his voice quiet but clear. "But not all of us must be monsters." Those words struck Aaron with the force of a physical blow. They etched themselves into his memory, a small piece of light in an ocean of darkness. They stayed hidden in that shelter for 2 long days as the sounds of the battle raged miles away. The world outside was still tearing itself apart, but in their small hideaway, a fragile peace took hold. Aaron shared his meager rations with Lena and her little girl, Elise. He even managed to make the child smile, playing a clumsy game of peekaboo with his helmet. It was the first time he'd seen a child's genuine smile in months. It felt like a miracle. Seeing the moment, Tommy nudged him, a tired grin on his face. "Look at you, Whitfield. Maybe when this is all over, you'll be a schoolteacher or something." Aaron managed a sad smile in return. If we make it out, Tommy, if we make it out. On the morning of the third day, Johann gathered them. His face was grim. American lines lie to the west, he said quietly, pointing through the trees. You must go now. German patrols will search here soon. Aaron frowned, a knot forming in his stomach. What about you? You can't stay here. Johann slowly shook his head. The look in his eyes was one of resignation. I cannot go with you. If my officers find out what I have done, they will kill my family, and then me. The unspoken reality of his sacrifice hung heavy in the air. Aaron stepped forward, his hand outstretched. Johann hesitated for a moment, then took it, his grip firm. Thank you, Aaron said, the two words feeling completely inadequate for the debt he owed. Johann managed a weak, fleeting smile. We are not so different, you and I. Lena stepped forward and gave Aaron a quick, tight hug. Danke, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. And then, just as quickly as they had appeared, they were gone, melting back into the woods. Aaron watched them go, a family walking back into enemy territory, their fate uncertain. The weight of their courage, their humanity, settled on him. He turned to the west, toward the American lines, his own path clear, but his heart heavier than ever. He was alive because an enemy soldier had chosen to be a man first, and that was a lesson he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Thank you for watching, and if this story moved you, please consider subscribing for more. The journey back to American lines took 3 brutal days, but they made it. Muddy, frostbitten, starving, but alive. Aaron, Tommy, and Lieutenant Harris reported what had happened, and Army intelligence questioned Aaron and Harris for hours. The story, however, remained the same. A German soldier had saved them. No one truly believed it, not fully, but they let it stand. War didn't have rules for kindness. Months passed. The Allies pushed deeper into Europe. Town after town was liberated. Aaron fought in battles he could barely remember, lost friends he would never forget, and just kept moving forward. To stop was to break. Then came April 1945. Rumors whispered through the ranks that Hitler was cornered. Berlin was collapsing, and the war was nearly over. But war doesn't simply end, it bleeds out. One evening, as Aaron's unit helped clear refugees from a bombed-out village, he heard a faint cry, high, thin, and strangely familiar. A child's cry. He rushed toward the sound. There, beside a broken cart, was Lena. Her clothes were torn, her face was bruised, and she limped badly. But it was her. And in her arms, Elise? Aaron breathed, his voice barely a whisper. The little girl looked up. Her eyes, those pale, snow-colored eyes, sparkled with recognition. Aaron, she whispered, mispronouncing his name just as she had months earlier. Before Aaron could speak, Lena broke down, sobbing. I found you, thank God, she said in broken English. Aaron knelt beside her. Where's Johann? He asked, his heart sinking. Lena's tears said everything before her words did. He was caught, helping villagers escape. They shot him. Aaron closed his eyes, a sharp pain twisting in his chest. Johann, who had saved them all, who had chosen mercy over hatred, was gone. Little Elise reached out and touched Aaron's cheek gently, as if sensing his grief. Lena's voice was a whisper. He told me. If anything happened, find the American with kind eyes. Aaron swallowed hard. He didn't feel kind. Not after everything he'd seen and done, but Johann had believed he was. He took Lena's hand. You're safe now. Both of you. VE Day arrived victory in Europe. The war was over. People danced in the streets, soldiers cheered, and cities lit up with fireworks. But Aaron didn't feel victory. He just felt quiet. As if the whole world was finally breathing again after holding its breath for 6 long years. In 1946, Lena and Elise immigrated to the United States under a refugee program. Aaron helped them settle in Ohio. He visited them often. They'd cook meals, tell stories, and sometimes just sit in a shared silence filled with unspoken memories. Elise grew up calling him Uncle Aaron. Years later, Lena remarried a kind man who worked at a bakery. Aaron was the best man at their wedding. Tommy survived the war, too. He bought a farm in Kansas and wrote to Aaron every Christmas. But Lieutenant Harris didn't make it. A mine explosion in the final months. Quick, quiet. The war had taken so many things from Aaron. But it had also given him one profound truth. Enemies were sometimes just friends wearing the wrong uniform. And heroes didn't always live to see the peace they fought for. Many years later, in 1978, Aaron visited Germany for the first time since the war. He found the ruins of Johann's village, now rebuilt into a small peaceful town. He walked to the hillside where Johann had once led him to safety and placed a single white flower on the ground. Thank you, Aaron whispered to the wind. And as the wind brushed through the grass, it felt like an answer. Aaron Whitfield passed away in 1999 at the age of 77. At his funeral were Lena, her husband, Elise, now a woman with 2 children of her own. Among Aaron's personal belongings, they found a single photograph. It showed a young German soldier, smiling faintly, his arm around a small child. There was no caption, no explanation, just a quiet memory of mercy in a merciless